starts here. It all starts here. Infinite surfaces turn to it. Uncountable textures depend on it. Unselfish, humble, consistent. Inseparable from our condition. Our first morning companion, our last associate at close of play. Revenant. Creator. And what do we ask of it? On, off, rise, set. A boundless force, far from binary. Limited words talk of limitless potential. These expanses we occupy, these spaces we construct and anoint our homes are built and composed just to contain it. This intangible blueprint that runs through all things. We gather round it, communicate through it. So what stuff is this that warms us to the core? We have bottled the storm and let it rumble, conquered the lightning and cradled its heat in our hands. Awe has turned to control. The infinite possibilities of the world outside exist within our grasp. Your space, your creation, it starts here. Light starts here.
Morning, everyone. Hey, Kareem, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you?
Oh, man. Yeah, loud and clear. Sounding good.
Awesome.
Sounding good. Nice. Well, look, mate, again, so nice to see you online. Thank you for joining us. And yeah, happy Wednesday to everyone out there. Thank you so much again for signing up and making the effort to be with us this morning. I mean, again, we've had, I don't understand how we keep getting the numbers that people are showing us. So look, thank you so much for your support. I mean, it's we're literally humbled to have this many people consistently on every single time, and for good reason, right? When we're getting some amazingly knowledgeable people online to talk about some subjects that are really impressive, and you know, particularly, well, the ones with Dr. Shelley and Marianne in the past have been absolutely amazing, and as well as those ones, this one has just been one of those doors that I've opened and then just been fascinated by. I mean, reading around it and talking to you, Kareem, has just been, you know, real mind-expanding, eye-opening kind of thing, and it's got me fired up to try and, you know, make a difference. And I guess to sort of frame the webinar as a whole, we're today talking to Kareem from Dark Source. Dark Source, I'll read. I'm going to make you blush in a minute, Kareem. That's sort of, I do it to everyone every time we do this. But Dark Source is founded by the award-winning lighting designer and graphic artist Kareem. Following his graduation from Wismar University, Architectural Lighting Design MA in 2010, Kareem has worked at Spears and Major as a senior member of the creative team for 8 years. He's worked on a diverse range of projects, which include Battersea Power Station redevelopment, Covent Garden site-wide lighting improvement, Marble Arch Place development, Shakespeare New Place Visitor Centre, Media's House Commercial Interiors, and City Point Public Realm. Throughout his career, Kareem has won several design awards, including Red Dot, Vox Juventa, PLDC, LAMP, and the Future of Urban Lighting. He was awarded with the title of Dark Sky Defender by the International Design Association in 2017 for his works advocating the importance of darkness. And his graphic art has been commissioned by Penguin Random House, British Astronomical Association, and published in Arc magazine since 2013. So, very awesome to have you on board. Thank you so much. And Dark Sky Defender, I feel like they give you a shield with that title. It's quite an impressive one. And
well, thanks for having me. And you know, you really give me a blush there. And like, you know, you're spoiling me now. I'll need you to do the intro at every occasion for me.
welcome it gladly, mate. But yeah, I mean, also, you know, your artwork, a lot of the artwork and the graphic design is Kareem's as well. So I guess we'll sort of start with this one here, and you know, the easiest way to sort of dive into it and to sort of explore this whole issue of you know, having access to the night sky and light pollution and everything that the effects of poor lighting management have on our planet is to ask the question of what is lighting pollution. Can you give us a little run through as to what that actually is or could be behind that?
Yeah, like, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm a big fan of the show. I've been watching you guys and, the stuff that you guys produced with Shelly as well. Like, I think if anything, you guys proved that, like, if the post-COVID economy for lighting industry hits the wall, you might pursue a career and, like, in the realm of, like, being an anchorman or presenter, like,
you got my blush going. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, it's really impressive. Like, you actually, like, the amount of technical issues that you deal with on a daily basis to get to this point, which now I've seen. I had a glimpse of into your realm as well. Well done, hats off.
Thank you.
Look, it was a really, like, honoring intro. I really appreciate it. I am a lighting designer. So I know Dark Source sounds very counterproductive for a lighting design studio, but it kind of shows the commitment to this cause as well, because light is a composition of brightness and darkness, and often all the cultures refer to the brightness element of light rather than actually appreciating the darkness. Even linguistically, we refer to the brightness when we talk about it. But if you just think of these two qualities, if one of those overcome one another, you wouldn't experience anything. So we're talking about a game of balance. Light pollution is a very hot topic. I'm a member of Commission for Dark Skies. What we do is, like, we work with local communities or councils and, try to help people whenever we can, wherever we can, with their issues in terms of intrusive, obstructive light. Also, we produce material information to broadcast and advocate the importance of the night sky and reducing light pollution, which is a growingly important topic as we advance with the, lighting design and engineering. We will have to overcome these issues. What was that saying that Einstein said? As the diameter of our knowledge expands, so does the circumference of the ignorance around it.
Yeah. It's that expression of, the more doors you open, the more you realize you don't know.
Absolutely. So with lighting, we actually put the Pandora's box for lighting enthusiasts, people, manufacturers, engineers, designers. We're at a very interesting frontier, actually. Like, it's like it's still we're exploring as we go. With this presentation and also with this, conversation, we'll try to explore that, cultural aspect of it as well, if we can. So we can get this show on the road. You can hit click, and so we can start with the textbook definition of what light pollution is. I bet all our viewers actually know it really well, but it's basically the dark sky movement is about having the light where we need it in the amount we need it. But the current lighting situation in our surroundings is not really adhering to that at the moment. And there are a couple of key things that can be done. It's actually like one or two really important moves that can mitigate this. If you can hit the next slide, it's literally getting the light to focus on where you need it through using shields or sophisticated optical performance with LEDs. Now we can do this, basically having the light where we need it, and ideally try to utilize warmer color temperature. Cooler color temperatures, including neutral white. The issue with that is basically through Rayleigh scattering effect in the atmosphere, the cooler light it just basically travels further in the atmosphere than the warmer light does. Again, going back to the textbook definition, is basically it's not only about light traveling upwards. It's also light aggressively bouncing from the horizontal plane going upwards. It's just basically meeting dust, pollution, water molecules, clouds, which manifests with a sky glow, which is not allowing us to access the stars, visually access the stars.
Sorry to cut you off, Kareem. There was an amazing thing which Dr. Shelley said in one of our, I think it was the Color and Optical Illusions webinar we did a while ago, but the bluing effect, I think it was called, and the idea that, when you're looking at things far away, you're actually able to see how far away something is by the amount of debris in between it. And the further less light will bounce back to your eyes the further away an object is, because that it's less quantity of light will bounce off and hit your retina. So these people in the cities where they're used to loads of pollution, where there's loads of light bouncing off every tiny particle of soot and whatever, when they go to the countryside or the plains of Africa or wherever, where you have vast open landscape, the depth perception is so off. But I guess even that ties in with the fact that, there is so much debris in cities, and that's where most of the light is, that it becomes almost just like a bulb in itself, right? It just like the whole thing just illuminates and hits all this solid matter, and it exacerbates the whole thing.
Yeah. Still, like, one of those qualities of light that blows my mind sometimes, no matter how much you learn about it, is like, it's not visible until it hits the surface, which philosophically is a very interesting concept. And like, then it's as per your nice intro video, like it was saying, intangible quality of it. It's intangible, it's imperceivable until it hits the surface, which is mind-blowing. And it's very interesting what you said is like, astronomers actually take Doppler shift into consideration when they're observing what objects are coming close to us or going away from us, because there'd be a shift in the spectrum towards red or blue, depending on if they're going away from us or coming towards us. Again, kind of shows you how important measuring light, because the DNA of all these information is embedded, encoded within light. So you basically, astronomy could be just a whole, or astrophysics could be just completely dedicated to our achievement in basically measuring and understanding light.
Measurement of light, yeah, the signatures that come from it, yeah.
Absolutely.
There's an amazing story as well, which you had, which you told me about. Do you want to explain about the New York thing? It's crazy.
Yeah, because we had to do the textbook definition of it, but I often prefer starting every conversation, every presentation with a small story, because I think stories really cut across the cultural differences, linguistic differences much faster. In 1994, there was an earthquake in Los Angeles, in US, and that was about around 4 a.m. in the morning. The power had gone out in town, so people rushed out, just trying to understand what the hell just happened. And because the power grid was off, they just saw these weird lights in the sky coming at them. So they just basically 911 calls on that night skyrocketed, apparently. Just basically the UFO sightings skyrocketed. But what they were seeing was the Milky Way, and they were seeing it through light for the first time, which kind of shows you how detached we are from our natural place in the cosmos and the universe.
I remember them calling in a bit. I read an article about it, and they were like, "There's this big silvery thing in the sky," and it literally was the Milky Way.
What is
it? It is, yeah, literally. I mean, it's the craziest thing. I mean, this. I think in the context of sort of what we're all going through, the fact that we're not all in a room together having this conversation, where different parts of the world and everything's virtual now because of Corona, and Corona's taught everyone, I think, a lot about the little things, and loads of people in cities are now moving to the countryside because they want to reconnect with nature. And I know from personal experience, my elder brother has had this post-viral fatigue thing, and he's a guy that's vivacious, energetic, like an amazing guy. And he, when we had this chat, he said he's had this sort of beautiful realization about taking a breath and enjoying the little things, and that's that's priceless. And I think we're all experiencing that to some level, but it's strange that with the disconnect to the night sky, we're sort of losing this whole planet-wide connection to nature. And it's an amazing book by a guy called Edward Wilson called Biophilia, and it's all about the love for biology and the innate requirement of the human spirit to be connected to nature. So in architecture, to bring in wood and water and sort of organic materials, but also to be connected and amongst nature as we have been through the whole evolutionary process. And by losing connection as a planet to the night sky, I feel like we sort of slightly lose our connection to each other, but also that innate human requirement to feel an existence and also to feel small. I mean, but what's the thing that you told me about the astronauts when they look back on planet Earth? They have this. I can't remember what it's called, but
it's called the overview effect. So astronauts in the space, when they see the globe as just one big marble, like, when they see the extents of it, that there is a shift in consciousness that is coined as the overview effect, that you come to a clear understanding of how fragile this blue marble is. And it's so important for you to protect it and also venture forth while you can, because you see that you're just a planet, but having this is a very, very low chance. Hence the reason we've been observing the universe. Maybe we just basically looked at a tiny portion of it, but we still can't find anything that can remotely represent what the blessing we have with the earth. And also, I 100% agree. I cannot agree with you more. The lockdown has been a punishment and blessing at the same time. It's very difficult to get your head around, as we were talking about this, because it's about, it showed us less is less. You just have to come to terms with it. And sometimes when we're very good at shifting the gear and actually change our mindset and adapt to the situation. As we were saying, capacity does not necessarily translate to ambition. I have the capacity to wake up every morning, do yoga or study French, and I have that mental capacity. But the thing is, you need that ambition, and you need that intent to push you to that, which is another layer which we realized with the lockdown. We've been forced heavily out of our comfort zone, and we managed to actually adapt really well, which is something that we shouldn't forget.
100%. I hope that we don't. I hope we sort of go into things with a bit more of a appreciation for the smaller things, like just going on a walk or that kind of stuff. It's a top conversation for another day. I think this, but it all ties in with this whole thing about the connection to nature. And I just think this story is amazing because it explains so clearly because it's such a progressive thing. One street light a day, it normalizes pretty quickly. So then after 2 years, it's just that whole street's gone. But whatever, we got loads more of them. And then the countryside is, and it's but slowly. I mean, some facts which I pulled together. So science advances estimates that the Milky Way is no longer visible fully to 1/3 of humanity, including 60% of Europeans and 80% of Americans, which is just crazy. 80% of Americans don't have a connection to nature, to the point where a big silvery thing in the sky caused them to call the emergency services. It's crazy. Yeah. And then Neil deGrasse Tyson, who we've spoken a bit about as well, has this amazing, I think, summary of what makes this space so incredible. And it's when you look at the night sky, you realize how small we are within the cosmos. It's kind of a resetting of your ego. To deny yourself of that state of mind, either wittingly or unwittingly, is to not live to the full extent of what it is to be human. So I just think it's, as always, that man getting it absolutely bang on the nail. But
I'm a big fan, and also I'm a big fan of. We talked about this Carl Sagan, actually, in the Cosmos series. Neil Tyson talks briefly in one of the episodes about his encounter with Carl Sagan and that how he inspired him when he was a young student at the time. Because we need these kind of science communicators. I'm a big fan of I don't know, Stephen Hawking and then Richard Dawkins and all these science communicators who actually are really good at explaining why it should matter to you. And this is what we're trying to do with the the whole stuff about stars. Why should it matter to you? I'm not an astronomer. Majority of the people who are pushing for this actually could be amateur astronomers who are interested in that. I'm interested in science and the greater fact and truth out there, but that's not the only reason. We have to look at this in perspective of we never had so limited access to the night sky as we do now. We've take all the generations into consideration. Our relationship with light has been actually if we can also hit the next slide, which we can talk about this in a bit. From the cultural perspective, is that for the large chunk of our existence, we had no control over light. Nighttime was terrorizing time for us. It was not efficient to be out there. Surely we must have witnessed lightning, storms that end up with fire, but we did not know how to create light of our own. It was a massive game changer. So we were literally limited to the the daily hours that was prescribed by the cosmos. But we've also needed that amount of time to evolve with it. Every living creature on this planet, whether it's a plant or animal or human being or insect, we have developed a system that adheres to the day and night cycle of this planet. And of all the species, humans are the ones who radically disrupted this cycle. And now we're learning what we have been messing with. If you can click on the next slide. Once light came into the picture, it was very difficult to separate the visibility quality from all the other range of qualities that came with light. So light was like fire was everything. Fire was allowed us to explore further, venture forth, and it was defense, it was offense, it was nutrition, and it was hunting, it was exploration, it was securing territory. So light, when it came into picture, it came with all these added qualities to it. So it was never divorced from it. It was never just visibility, as it is we're experiencing now. And one interesting aspect of it is, we were talking about this with you, that our visual system is remarkable. And when we say visual system, it has components. Eye is just one part of it, because it works in a relationship with our brain in such an intricate way that actually facilitates the vision that we perceive. But actually, these are some stuff that most of the lighting people would know, but I'm just going to glide over this. So if you would just go back to that previous slide, just a second. So this, it shows the vision difference between the rods and cones, which actually refer to different kind of visions depending on the day and the night. So basically photopic and scotopic vision. As you can see, the cones are good at telling, color. They're just basically red, green, and blue, which is the constituents of white. But the rods are different animal in terms of their sensitivity towards color. But what's interesting is also, but the cones, you can see that their level of detection in terms of precision, and then you can see about the rods, about our vision is more about detecting the peripheral vision. If you can hit the next slide. This also shows you with photopic during the daytime vision, our perception of color is way more nuanced and advanced. But in the nighttime, is actually we're more attuned to receiving less color information, because evolutionary, we've never had this luxury of being able to have such a vibrant, color perception at night. And thanks to the advent of electric lighting, we're celebrating that now. If you can hit the next one. So that kind of briefly tells you about our photopic vision and scotopic vision. So during the photopic vision, with daytime vision, we actually mostly relies on the cone receptors. And at night, it's about the scotopic vision, basically, which relies on rods. But there is actually, between these two visions, we have the blue hour, where we call where the mesopic vision that comes into play, where your rods and cones are actually working together. This is why sometimes you might feel when you're walking outside, it's just in that twilight, that you feel a shift within your vision. That is kind of related to that. But what I find really interesting is what you saw with that first slide that was showing the eye, is that during the daytime, our vision is actually just tiny, because we're looking at a very, very narrow 2-degree precision. And our brain is so good at actually complementing the rest of the image, is actually, it appears like we're having a million pixel or 4K vision everywhere we look, but actually the precision is very narrow. But at night, that completely changes. As you can see, it's no more about precision, it's about having the peripheral vision, where we actually see our surroundings, because a jaguar could jump onto you and hunt you anytime. So you have to be aware of your predators at night that might come from right or left.
I mean, it's amazing what the brain, we don't really give it credit. I mean, it's I think that there are as many neural connections in 1 square inch of your brain as there are stars in the entire Milky Way, to bring it back to the astronomy side. And I sort of spoke to you about it before when we did the sort of run through, but So I quite like my cricket. And when you go to a cricket game, and I didn't realize this until Dr. Shelley sort of explained it to me, or we worked on it together. But it's my understanding that at a cricket match, when the sort of umpires pull out their light reader and they go, all right, stumps, everyone's gone, and the crowd have got, quite a lot of drink down them, and they're getting a bit feisty, and they're saying, oh, but they're booing. And they're like, why? This is crazy. I can still see it. And it's because, the brain is essentially instructing the people to dilate so it can maintain the same experience, like visual experience or a similar one, but the rods are then more engaged because of the way the light is then falling on the retina. It's engaging more rods at the back and the sides of your eye, which means that and rods transfer signals to your brain more slowly than cones, which means that if someone's bowling 90 mile an hour at you, that change in light and that change in dilation of your pupil will basically mean massive advantage to the bowling team. So I don't think we give the old noggin enough credit for what it does, on a day-to-day basis at filling in the blanks and, sort of making stuff seem consistent.
I mean, it's an evolutionary arsenal, and one package is a very vital organ to us. We take 80% of our information visually, which we don't really appreciate, and taking that out of the equation would be a very challenging thing. And as we get older, our eyes dilate less, as you were saying, the task, the purpose of lighting is a very important aspect. Yes, in a task like this, or you're performing a surgical operation, the amount of light that you require can be immense, and it takes as much as it needs, because the speed and delicacy of that task really defines the level of light that you need. And sometimes it comes down to you need what you need. Obviously, with the light pollution, it's an exterior lighting subject that falls under a different category. But it's a very diverse topic. So this is this slide. I like to use it often. Actually, we've been talking about series. Yeah. So this is actually if you're familiar with the cosmic calendar. So if you take the entire existence of the universe from the day that the Big Bang, and going all the way to the current moment we are in time, if you put it onto an annual calendar, this is what you get. And we literally come into play at the 31st of December. So and if you hit the next click, if you put all our entire history, it fits into that. And basically, if we are to talk about our history of elimination, that we're probably on the last day, we've found fire around 8:30 p.m. And maybe Columbus arrived to America maybe in the last minute. First municipal lighting, let's say 1664 in France, that was actually probably the last seconds. And if you just come to the now, where we reached our goal and basically found the selfie stick and just basically enjoying 21st century civilization and what it brought to us. But it really helps to put things into perspective about how insignificant we are, which I find it really enjoyable. And this is one of the qualities of looking into the night sky, and just basically, which inspires humility, that you're part of a greater system. You're part of this, you descended from this cosmic being, and there's so much more to explore. What was that Carl Sagan saying? Is that something incredible is somewhere waiting to be known.
I mean, it's awesome. It's also, that fragility that the astronauts see within planet Earth when they look back on it. It's it's strange, because obviously all the politicians stand on the sort of the on their TVs or whatever, going, oh yeah, we're going to send someone to the moon, not because it is easy, but because it is hard. I mean, it is amazing all the stuff that we're doing, but I think that it's almost got to a stage now where everything is so quick and so efficient and so good that we kind of feel like we're masters of the universe, where we know. I think we just know nothing about the atmosphere and the world beyond our atmosphere, even the stars and galaxies beyond us, and we think we're masters. But I think we've, when you put it into a sort of visual representation like this, you can see just how insignificant we are within the whole sort of sphere of the galaxy and even planet Earth and stuff. And I think we should still respect nature, and And I think we've lost connection to it. We've become masters of our own destiny, and it's not necessarily the right path, I think. But
absolutely. And also we've like, because we were so obsessed with being at the center of everything. When Galileo came up with this outlandish idea that like we're actually at the fringes of our own galaxy, and we are evolving around the sun. It's revolving around the sun. It's not the sun evolving around us. We like threatened to
wasn't it? It was
position and everything, and now we're at a complete different stage. So space exploration has been a very tremendously important part of this game as well. Like we sometimes forget, like it's not only about like the competition between the Soviets and the US at the time, which resulted with the space for accelerating the space exploration. But now we're at a state that like Chinese, Russian, European, American governments can work together to build an international space station, which is amazing achievement for mankind. We've developed the Hubble Space Telescope, which told us a lot about what's happening out there in the universe, because you didn't have to deal with the light pollution anymore.
Have you seen the Netflix program Mars?
Not yet. You told me about it.
For anyone in lockdown who's completed Netflix but hasn't done this one, then it's pretty interesting. They interview Elon Musk and SpaceX, and then they cut to a sort of a fictitious what it would be like sort of doing life on Mars and how you go about it and the logic. But there's when they cut to the present day and they're interviewing the scientists who are sort of trying, the rocket scientists. One of them says, one of the most amazing things about space is creed, color, gender, whatever your belief systems are, your location in the world, space is the thing that unifies everyone. And, I keep getting a bit over emotional as I do with most of my webinars, but when it comes to losing that disconnection to space is a disconnection to each other in a weird way. And scientists, the scientific community are so neutral. They work together, as you say, to go up and build a space station that hovers around us. And
maybe that's why that overview of factors, because when you look down at the planet, you don't see borders, you don't see, you just see one unified globe, and that's it. That's the extent of it. Like, there are no, all these disagreements, all these borders, all these, customs and all travel issues. When you look at it from the space, it's just in there. It's in the minds. This is not something real. Same with the light pollution. Is that often we try to, for example, recently we've been talking with the Repub Observatory that there's a new development happening next to them, and just they came to us just basically saying, look, the developer is like really nice in helping us to move the observatory, and we were just trying to get our heads around if 200 meters would be fine. And so 200 meters is nothing. You'd be lucky to get away from light pollution with 20 or 200 kilometers.
Yeah.
That's the problem, that light pollution, it may not be you, it may not be your neighbor, but it might be the next town that is causing the issue for you. It's such a grand problem to deal with. This is why I think it's much more efficient to focus on the cultural aspect of it and change our culture of excess rather than just telling people what to do or what not to do. Because I'd like to see it as a cultural issue at the bottom of it.
Well, should we, touching on that, if we're talking about, the implications of it and stuff, if we talk about, I don't know if I'm breaking up the sort of slides generally, but, we said it was going to be a sort of, and also I should have said this at the beginning, but guys, if anyone has any questions whatsoever, this is, your chance just to literally interact, engage, ask anything. It's a very relaxed session, this, and it's just, there's so much awesome stuff to talk about. So if you have anything, please type it in the chat below. But Kareem, it might be interesting. Yeah, exactly. But it might be interesting to touch upon like a few things that the light pollution, negatively affects the planet with. The physical aspect of it is quite a big one as well. We had Russell Foster on one of our webinars, and Dr. Shelley is ever knowledgeable and just an awesome human being all around. Gave us some insights into circadian rhythms, and the night sky being blocked out is one thing, but then if you've got your neighbor's lamp suddenly street light shining in through your bedroom window and disrupting your sleep patterns, that is almost the equivalent of night shift work. And night shift work, the World Health Organization defines as possibly carcinogenic. So, this whole, as you say, excess of light and photons of light bouncing around and hitting people's retinas and stuff, it's just confusing our whole sort of human existence, really. I mean, we don't know what time of day it is. It puts us into sympathetic response, and our body gets stressed. And the hormone, I think I'm trying to work out where it is, but the there was a study that used satellite photos to gauge the level of nighttime artificial light in 147 communities in Israel. Then they overlaid the photos with a map detailing the distribution of breast cancer cases. The results showed a statistically significant correlation between outdoor artificial light and breast cancer. And the reason for it, they believe, is because of hormone manufacturers. And they believe that cancers that can essentially, that are caused by inefficient distribution of hormones in someone's body, it's as a result of sort of excess light and stuff. This is like a drop in the ocean, right? I mean, it's damaging to the human species.
Absolutely. There'll be some slides coming up to that anyway as well. But yeah, definitely. Look, we've never produced and consumed lighting to this degree ever in our existence. Obviously, we went a bit above and beyond, maybe went a bit too excessive in the way that we do it. But now we're understanding that it comes at a cost. Everything comes at a cost. Lighting comes at a cost as well. That's the way this universe operates and works. And now we're understanding the impact that it has on biodiversity and impact on us. We're understanding that also, like, there are lots of new research papers coming out showing the correlation between the insect population decline, which majority of them are pollinators, which are tremendously doing an important job for the universe. Like, the food chain diagram, that if you take humans out of this, like, the world will be fine. Actually, the world will heal quite quickly. But if you just take the insect population out, the whole food system, the pyramid collapses immediately. Therefore, we need to be caring about this. There's strong links between the night shift workers and like people who are exposing themselves to light at night. And majority of those is actually not by choice. This is a social economic structure that forces people to go out there. Like, as much as we talk about light pollution just by the sake of it, imagine that you're a single mom, who's taking care of 3 kids, and you are having to do a night shift work as well. So it's a social problem as much as it's just a cultural issue as well. There'll be lots of layers of this that we'll be talking about in terms of the biological clock, but we can get to it with the next slides if you like.
Yeah, cool.
One thing that's interesting is what you were saying with the satellites as well was very interesting. All these light pollution images that we used to get, up until last couple of years, actually the last 10 years, we know that the detection of the satellite system was not attuned to cool white. It wasn't really detecting the bluish lighting. It was more attuned to detecting the amber lighting. So actually, within the last couple of years, we're now understanding with the advanced technology that can detect all range of light pollution. Then actually, the problem is way worse than we maybe anticipated.
Getting a little hot in there. Yeah, it's pretty glowing.
Yeah.
Non-stop.
Massive learning curve. But what I really get fascinated about that, if you go back to that Earth image, is that imagine that you're like an alien coming to this planet for the first time. That's your first instant image that that there is intelligent life on this planet, because you see light within its darker hemisphere, and it's fascinating to me that that's the first plain sight observation that if there's any alien civilization that might do as soon as they have a look at this. It's just light came to a stage for us that is actually represent us, our existence as a cultural flag, if you mean.
The whole so it's my brother that worked so hard to put that video together with a couple of other very talented sort of videographers and stuff that we show every week. But it's every time we do this. But this whole thing about we communicate through it. We've bottled the storm and let it rumble. We've cradled its heat within our grasp. This whole idea that, office blocks completely lit up with LEDs, and then the screens that are allowing all of us to connect together, LEDs and light, and it's everywhere and it's everything. And this image here as well sort of shows it as well. I'm sure we've all pulled late nights and we've been sat around computer screens. It's so great.
LEDs are like really, really versatile and amazingly advanced lighting tools, and we use we rely on them, and they're exponentially ever growing and improving light source. We don't also the cost of it is that we don't have the same diversity as we used to have in the market now, because everything is now changed for the right reasons, dimmability, color and efficiency, whatnot. There's lots to count, but just 10 years ago we used to have metal halides, maybe fluorescents and other stuff to choose from, and the state that we've come to, everything is a bit too LEDified, and sometimes I wonder, do we have enough time to catch up with the shift from combustion to basically electricity happened over some time, but then we shift to electronics so quickly that maybe our recycling regime and ethic didn't really catch up with that. Didn't have the chance to catch up.
Chasing the tail a little bit, right? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, so our I've sort of told you this earlier on as well, but there's a good sort of client of ours. So they asked us whether we might be able to get involved in this eco project up in the north of England, and we were like, yeah, of course. And we sent them our sort of, we've got an eco more commodity based range, which is designed for that, to get your lumen per watt ratio up to a standard that allows it to pass these eco regulations. And essentially what it is allowing all the light created from the LED to be scattered in all the directions it possibly can, which gets the efficiency out. But our core range is designed around being very small, very discreet. We have glare guards. We can finish any kind of number of ways as well. So you can actually make it rose gold. And the whole idea is to blend the artificial with the natural to make this sort of biophilic crossover. And it's about controlling the beams of the light and all that kind of stuff. And I think that, it did shock me the other day when I found out that, these eco buildings require you to just scatter the light as much as possible. And it sort of highlights for me quite a key thing about the regulation around, the distribution of lighting. It may be an eco building, but what is it eco to? Is it when you look at something like the bird here, if that bird in the center of the photo is flying past this eco building, then it's a big effect, and it's the progression might be more eco than efficiency. I mean, it's a big debate, obviously, but
100%. I'm with you. Also, we're very good at when it comes to numerical values of measuring the impact. For example, the standards like BREEAM and LEED are very, very well accepted energy codes, and they do talk about the lumens per watt that you get from a light fitting. But then it's particularly speaking for BREEAM, for example, it's very easy to bypass their regulations in terms of the amount of uplighting that you do. But it's very easy to justify, and there are lots of loopholes within that. When it comes to the lighting effect, the quantifiability is a bit more questionable. Then it's not as easy talking about numerical values and energy. So people are quite energy focused, but that is not always giving you the right scenario, as you said, with an ecology, scattering light everywhere as much as possible. Which is a situation that we face with everywhere. Sometimes, the standards people go for, depending on the British standards, S classes, P classes, it's often, people want to play it safe, so they go for a higher standard than they should be going for. And what we often try to say is there's more than one way to skin a cat. There's way more alternatives to get into that position rather than always playing safe. This health and safety conscious state of mind just made us go higher and higher. And the problem with our visual system is, as you were saying with your example of the street lighting, for example, we're very good at our visual system is way better at detecting contrast rather than detecting the actual light levels. So this means for example, like, recently during the lockdown, the local council, I live in Hornsey, Crouch End area. So they, in a very sneaky way, that they just refurbished all the lanterns, and overnight they turned all cool white. And we just went, what the hell happened?
The lighting design is nightmare as well. Just
and I'm here like advocating, talking about light pollution and stuff, and I can't do anything about what's happening here on my own street, which is like this has been a recurring theme everywhere in London. For example, we've been in touch with some community in High Barnet area. They were also saying that the same happened to her. I've been given chance to speak about the planning application about my neighbor, or maybe talk about the planning application that is done 10 doors down, my neighbor. They tell me, do you have any objections to that? But when it comes to street lighting, nobody's asking me what I was thinking about.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's I mean, I wonder whether all, because I remember when I was a kid, so I've got a twin brother and an older brother. We all work together, and even now we're just sort of typical brothers. We sort of wrestle, take the mickey out of each other. And when we were kids, we used to play in trees, scuff our knees, rip our shirts, fight with sticks, all that kind of stuff. And I think that there's a trend at the moment, whether it's media, whether it's just sort of general regulations or whatever. But I think that the bubble wrapping is going on too much. There's a lot of bubble wrapping in so many. This isn't a political sort of chat in any way, but in so many scenarios, that's absolutely right. And there are so many areas that need more work and all that kind of stuff. But I think there is a risk and a consideration needs to be taken of by putting too much consideration, trying to bubble wrap things too much, you could potentially overlight a space, for example, for needing too much light within a street to make sure that it's safe for people to walk down and stuff. You can actually really do extra damage that we're not quite aware of yet. And I think the lack of regulation means that in the future we might be sort of doing something to ourselves that we're not quite aware of yet in the present.
100%. I cannot agree with you more. It's very interesting what you said is about being very precautious, and which turns into a culture that you just basically always play on the safe side. But some stuff don't really work that way. And which, particularly with the lighting case, we're understanding that the being excessive comes at a big cost. You will notice maybe if you look at the light pollution of London, you will recognize that parks are the darkest areas, which is great. We're blessed with lots of parks in this town, and which worked really well during the lockdown for all of us. But also you'll recognize that the wealthy areas, I'm talking about Knightsbridge or maybe Chelsea and St. John's Wood and stuff, would be probably the darkest areas in terms of municipal lighting as well. So not only the private property. So you can see that the wealthy areas are quite attuned to the fact that darkness is a quality to preserve. But then you would see wherever the municipality felt that there is a security and safety issue, then you would see really light polluted streets. And I love green lanes. I live close to green lanes, for example. You can see that people don't really mind the light so much. This is why it's lit to an excessive standard. But then you come to Crouch End, just 5 minutes down the road, you'll see all light lanterns have shields because people complained. And the sensitivity towards people's complaints, and also unfortunately it's a bit unjust and disproportionate coming from who's listening to them and who's trying to accommodate them as well. And there are lots of research being carried out in terms of finding a correlation between security and lighting, which still is quite questionable. There's no hard evidence that actually more light deters crime. We know that there's research and correlation between alcohol consumption and nightlife, that there's a correlation that there's maybe antisocial behavior might also increase. But just light for its sake, we're still understanding that actually psychology-wise, maybe this is not the case, because the numbers are showing that actually most of the break-ins, burglaries and stuff are happening during the daytime rather than nighttime. When you think of it, it makes sense because the burglar needs to see where they're going. So darkness doesn't really help them neither.
The cat burglar in the cartoons isn't necessarily an accurate depiction, is it? The sort of black and white stripe with the swag bag. It's at nighttime. It's still the way it goes. But I mean, it's I'm just slightly aware of the time as well, Kareem, because we've been going for 10 minutes shy of an hour. I mean, literally, we've had long old chats, and this is such an amazing topic and so much to learn. And I'm just gonna read out a question that we've got from Clarissa as well. So, hi Kareem, thanks for your presentation, very inspiring. There you go, get you blushing again.
Yeah.
I work as a lighting designer in Copenhagen, a city where it is possible to see the stars while walking around the city centre, where light levels of street lighting are kept low, facades are not illuminated, and the municipality is interested in preserving darkness. There are countries that are not interested in the preservation of darkness at all. I can think about Arab Emirates or China, for example, where everything is brightly lit during dark hours, and it's almost impossible to understand what time of day it is. How do you think the issue of light pollution can be addressed and treated in countries where the cultural approach to light is so different?
It's a very good question. I mean, like it's one of those questions that I'm still trying to answer myself. So first of all, hi to Clarissa. I know her. I also saw James's note as well. Hi, James. What I'm gonna say is, as you were saying, like, you know, you were reading a statistic from US about like 80% of the population couldn't actually access the night sky. It's very interesting that, like, where there is actually where the issue is more centralized and focused. America, I mean, US started this, I mean, a group in the US started the International Dark Sky Association, which have been plowing, like, you know, aiming for achieving dark sky. So trying to make it more popular. And they've been, you know, they got a great track record in actually making this something, becoming a kind of recognition that people may want to associate themselves with. And I think it's good to support, you know, all organizations of any kind, you know, NGOs, NPOs, like, you know, who are actually aiming for that. And I think we just need to make darkness, you know, be sexy. So basically, we just need to make sure people want to, you know, be associated with that look.
I think also from sorry to intervene, but like you know, you said really well earlier about how you don't need to be an astronomer, you don't need to be a, you know, rocket scientist or anything to have an appreciation of nature and the connection to it. And, you know, it can be just going to a council meeting, it can be going to Dark Source and, you know, trying to support what you guys are up to. And I think it's just about being active in the acknowledgement and pursuit of darkness.
Absolutely. I think it's a very interesting aspect that, like, you know, she's referring to the cultural aspect of it, which when I speak with some scientists who are, like, you know, quite, like, you know, well recognized within the within this field, they actually defy the cultural differences. To them, they say, like, you know, no, it's more like a global issue. That might be because, for example, in Arab Emirates, like, you know, she's saying maybe the city centers are, like, you know, overlit, but maybe in the grand scheme of things, because of the deserts are not being lit and stuff, that might actually compensate to that. I do believe that there's a cultural aspect of it. As we were saying, that the rich, wealthy neighborhoods within London are, like, could be less light polluted. It's interesting. I was speaking with Georgia Macmillan, who's one of the campaigners for Mayor Dark Skies in the west coast of Ireland, and she was saying people see electricity and power as basically wealth and prosperity. So when it comes to the town, it's actually it's seen as an advancement, and therefore people actually appreciate more light. So depending on where you go geographically, I think it has an interesting significance. But what I would say to Clarissa is basically goodwill goes a long way. I quite late found the power of communication in terms of going to the next person, going to the neighbor and talking about what this is. And, you know, and the good old school of diplomacy, basically just explaining what the situation is. Most of the feedback and response I often got was very positive. People were interested in actually, like, oh, I've never thought of it that way. And let me just basically, if this became a nuisance for you, let me change the way I live. And, like, this is the harmony. This is the way we do. In the big projects as well, we're particularly in the UK field, we're very focused on the scope of the project that we're given. But often you understand actually the most successful projects are which take, you know, the neighbor, the retailers, the you know, the community into the consideration and starts a broader conversation. And as you achieve every little victory is something. Like, lighting designers are really good at knowing the additive quality of light, because we paint with light. And if anything, you should just look at this as, darkness is your greatest canvas to start with. And everything you put on that, in a clever way, that will basically bring your art to life. And the more we actually establish better precedents, it will become a more attractive image for people to want to associate themselves with.
And there's so we do these things. If you go to our website, I don't know whether you've actually seen them, Kareem, but we've got this section called Conversations with Light. And we're going to send out a mailer after this with a link to the recording of this and a YouTube channel where we put all of our stuff. So Toby Dennis is the lighting designer for the Chemical Brothers, and we've got this interview with him, and he talks about how the most powerful thing you can do with light is turn it off. Which is amazing, and we've got this whole thing of turning it on and on and on and on, adding layers, turning on lights, adding LEDs, and all this stuff. But overlighting a space is just as criminal as underlighting it. And actually, until a power cut happens, you don't really realize how much light we have and how much we rely on it. And there's a good question from Octa as well, saying, do you think we would start losing the dark areas in the countryside as people are moving out from cities because of the pandemic? Or do you think people would be more careful regarding the lighting strategies in those areas?
Yes and no. Yes, we know that the cities are, by 2050, I think majority of the human population will be living in big towns. But that was before COVID. We'll see the repercussions of COVID as well, because nowadays we're seeing as well people saying, I'm going to move to, why am I paying London rent when I'm here? I can do my work from anywhere. So I had friends who are moving to Birmingham and other places, looking for property and stuff. I think we'll need to see, because less population also allows those countryside towns to afford with using less light. So there are actually good examples of, for example, in Phos in Wales, the county, there are some towns that actually have no street lighting. So, it comes down to the community. If they're cool with that, they would switch the light off. And smaller the community, usually it's much easier to coordinate and have a consensus about it. More the people, it's often the tricky. And cities are very high density areas, and as much as street lighting, one of the biggest issues I see in London is the private layer of lighting. The light that comes from the private property is not regulated. And in UK, we have no law that is actually regulating this at the moment, which is mind-blowing. When we're speaking with people, actually, the legal action that can be taken is quite tough. This is why we try to be a bit more diplomatic in terms of our communication. And one thing you said about the darkness being in, I'm 100% with you. Because when you're bombarded with lighting effects, and there is a moment where the light is switched off, and now you're just left in.
You light a candle or something, and it just feels so much more chilled, doesn't it? It's,
And often when I was just yesterday, we were at a meeting where they were talking about how to do the street lighting, and we just basically asked, could you afford not having street lighting? And the developer was really happy. Yeah, that would say so it's very counterproductive for a lighting designer to say I'm gonna say goodbye to this job at the cost as saying if you can go with less light, go with less light. But I'm not saying everybody should be as excessive or bold with these decisions. Every little victory you get matters. Explain to your client what value they're going to get. You don't need to light every single architrave, windowsill, every single architectural definition. You can be judicious. Whatever you say, rather than lighting up the entire skyscraper. Maybe just if you can light just the entrances and the crown, maybe that is a massive achievement for you. You don't have to do everything.
So I'm part of the renter generation, because London property is just so expensive. You sort of, you basically just go from rental place to rental place to rental place. And my flat is just horrible. The lighting is so blue and the dimming hasn't been synchronized. So when you dim it down, you're still getting about 30% of its minimum power, or of its total power. So literally you get 30% of this bright whopping 15 watt LED, and it's bright blue. So in the evenings when I'm sort of just trying to gently watch Mars or something on Netflix, then turn on the lights and it's still so bright, it's glary, and you kind of it's difficult to be part of the rental generation, not be able to change the house to optimize your experience of it or of this world. So it's another weird sort of side conversation, I think, probably for another time. But there are so many elements to this more, as you say, socio-economic side of the discussion that affect it and affect the psyche of the people involved in it.
Yeah, and there's a trend also, like, for street lighting, that like people get very efficient and high output luminaires and then dim them down to 5-10%. Then no, this is another wrong decision. That fitting was not fit for purpose. Then because if you're dimming it down to such a low extent, I'm only talking about external lighting here, because so much production power and material went into making that luminaire. And then if you're obviously dimming extends the longevity and lamp life of the fitting. But if you're dimming it down to 5%, then you didn't really need that fitting. You needed something less powerful.
Yeah. I think it's picking and choosing your battles. And I think this idea of controlling the light a little bit and considering the color temperature and the color rendering as well, the quality of the light that you're introducing to replicate sunlight and feel like a human. Again, going back to the example, talk about what lights in my flat, the rendering in these bright blue lights, horrible. My housemate gets fed up with me just sort of permanently going, these bloody lights, we need to change that. Whatever, mate, they're just lights. But I guess if you're in the industry, it sort of it bugs you a bit more, just like with your street lamps changing to 4,000K or 5,000K overnight.
Absolutely. I mean, the doctors can't heal themselves, so I'm not going to show the lighting condition that we have in our place.
The camera is tilted remarkably down. Yeah.
As a lighting designer, I'm not going to
lit up like the 4th of July. It's not great, but I think it's we've had an hour of conversation and stuff, and I could literally talk about this for so much longer. I think potentially, if we sort of summarize, I'd love to show you. I'll flick through the art of the animations you've done as well, Kareem, because it is really amazing. It's talent you've got, and it's it is sort of a look to what the world could be. We are literally moving towards such bright light everywhere, and maybe that's what we need, kind of thing.
Briefly speaking, just to touch up on those visuals, it's very disconcerting that because we don't have a collective vision where we go with light, and it's just basically everybody's doing their thing, it's just basically our dependence on the grid and glorifying the energy consumption will come at a cost. That what will light mean in cultural respect? If you go back to that visual one back, I think, it's just basically showing this dystopian setting. It just basically, if you can go one click back, and just basically showing that what master will the light serve? Because this is definitely not about visibility anymore. It's about visual information, and so we are very obsessed with visual information, and we're expecting light to fulfill that quality, which is a very concerning aspect of it, because it's now we've transcended the visibility element. Now we're talking about other stuff, media walls, brands and other stuff. So I think we have to have a vision about where we want to take light with. And if you go to the next slide, it just briefly talks about, until like 17th century, maybe, we've had a very agricultural existence, which we had defined by the harvest of the seasons and, run by social and political elite. And we had a different way of, sleeping patterns even. So you would have a second sleep. So you would retire to bed, and in nighttime, you would sleep 4 or 5 hours and then wake up, and you would be just like, use that time for prayer, self-reflection, sex. Then, you would retire to bed for another 4 or 5 hours. After the Industrial Revolution, the amount of sleep time we get was shrunk as well. So, the way of living has completely changed with our shift in relying to the grid. Maybe we went a bit more excessive, as you can see that, we had a very good idea and very good intent. Maybe we just need to take it a notch or two down. Now we're on the
Icarus, isn't it? The story of the Icarus flying too close to the sun. You create this thing, and you don't quite realize, what it is you're playing with. And it is arguably literally, it's a modern version of playing with fire, isn't it? I mean, literally, we bottled fire, chucked it in a bulb, and now, or a chip or whatever, and now we can't escape from it, and it's so normalized now. It's like the agricultural revolution. We thought we were the masters of the world by doing the agricultural revolution, and actually we are now slaves to agriculture, and people that thought, oh, this crop will feed us forever, it feeds you pretty poor value nutritionally, and you have to tend to it all year. You can't move. You know, it's
And I think it would be also helpful to, because we didn't really talk much about the impact on the biodiversity in the sense of, like, you know, we talked about pollinators with stuff. The inequality that light at night brings to species is basically some species are cool, they're okay with electric lighting. They can come near it. Majority of them cannot. And this means, like, all these other moths and, you know, insects that are bedazzled by light and captured within the beam of light, they can't escape. And then all these predators who are okay with coming to light can actually just get them. They get an open buffet. So there are bat species who can't come anywhere near lights, which causes a massive inequality in food chain as well, which now we're understanding bats are very, very important pollinators as well, not only insects.
And there's some quite interesting facts as well, which you pulled out on the topic of nature, and you know, the expression "like a moth to a flame." It's self-evident, right? I mean, so I sort of read a little bit about some examples of sort of what the equivalent is of sympathetic lighting and unsympathetic lighting. And I think, you know, I'm sure we've all been in a situation where you're driving, you know, along. See if I can get my hands in shot. Here we go. So two cars traveling along a road. One has the full beams on, the other doesn't. But when that car is driving into the full beams, it's aggressive, right? Like, it's too much. And that's what these insects are dealing with. And then, you know, if the lights dip down, suddenly, you know, the space above is a lot more calm. And it's just that tiny bit of shielding, that tiny bit of underlighting, that consideration of just flipping the headlights from full beam to half beam that can make such a massive difference on so much stuff. And yeah, you think of you obviously know about the turtles and stuff in Australia. I think it's, well, wherever turtles decide to be, but you know, they get distracted and dazzled by the lights in the city, and they think it's the moon, and they go into the city, and they're found in gutters, and you know, we're massively affecting the populations there. And the estimates as to the number of birds dying from collisions across North America annually range from 98 million to close to 1 billion.
Wow. 98
million to 1 billion birds colliding with office towers and stuff just because they're lit up, they're distracting. It's crazy. You know,
it's interesting that you actually touched upon the migrant birds. For example, like, you know, like during the lockdown, to celebrate NHS, we were uplighting all the landmarks and architecture. So this is a bit more sensitive topic because it's an example to show you how cultural stigma is attached to lighting. So, for example, that was the migration period, and we basically utilized blue lighting as well, which is probably the worst kind of color. But then you can't argue that is celebrating the people in the front lines, like, you know, putting their lives in danger. And then culturally, we're celebrating with this element. Like, for example, after 9/11, if you remember, they just erected these beams of light that so like they were like, you know, there were lots of studies about the amount of moths and other insects that were captured in it. So unfortunately, the cultural element of it is so much attached to the visual quality of it. And so we are trying to kind of loosen, not break that link, but loosen that link if we can. For example, we couldn't really measure massive difference. I mean, obviously the studies will come out in the future. Mostly with the countryside, we didn't really much difference with the lockdown. Seeing scientists' reports, and during, I mean, maybe the cities might be a different story, but we didn't really see a massive difference in decline. And one of the reasons was like people were leaving their properties lights on, just to culturally say, like, don't get disheartened, we're still here, the light is on, we'll be back. And you know, you cannot argue with that. It has a very nice intent and message in it, but again, it's very wasteful at the same time. So it's about how we readjust this cultural differences is an issue.
Well, I think if we sort of skim through the last one, this is you know, just the sheer brightness that just the UK alone is giving out. And I got some printed out images of the European scale, and it's even more terrifying. It's crazy, but there is hope, right? You know, you're doing some stuff in Wales, and Wales looks like it's got, you know.
Yeah, well, World Champion, 18% of the landmass of Wales is under protected night sky. So, like, you know, and we're aiming to achieve more. When you look at this image, the first thing that jumps at you is like, we lost London. It's too late to make all of London. You can
Yeah.
see, clearly every little victory, then it becomes significant, because whatever you can do to improve the situation would be amazing. And in UK alone, we spent £1 billion just to light the night sky, just wasted money.
50% of energy that's used for lighting electricity is for lighting, electrical instruments is lost. It's just wasted. So, we could literally be saving money and making life more efficient. But it's just legislation and normality and just sort of lack of regulation, I think, that does it. It's crazy. It's such, I mean, this is why I got so fired up talking to you about this subject. It's just because it's something which is so normalized, and light is so normalized. And the whole idea of this webinar series is to explore the neuroscience of light and the socioeconomic impacts of lighting, because it's so bloody normal. Light is everywhere, and we just take it for granted. And when you start looking at every aspect of it, including the lack of light, it really opens your eyes to stuff. And it's something that I hadn't considered, and I'm in the industry, and it's it's crazy.
Absolutely. I cannot agree with you more. And, none of us really experience excellent or dark sky level. There are different shades of qualities of light. This is a graphic that is actually produced by International Dark Sky Association. And majority of us don't experience these conditions, so we're completely oblivious to that. And to put it in perspective, nobody in the past had to ask for access to the night sky. If Kepler, Copernicus, or Galileo had to go to the Atacama Desert in Chile just because it's drier conditions, we wouldn't have actually, because it was impossible. But now, because people are more mobile, it becomes a bit normal. Oh yeah, I'm an astronomer, I'll travel to somewhere with good night sky conditions. But why not everybody having that access? Because there's not a day that an amateur astronomer is finding something that nobody has been looking out for. So you need every single eye to build it. Even dinosaurs were very comfy, until the one asteroid came and hit it. They roamed this planet way longer than we did, 165 million years or something. We're at our infancy. In a way, we're way more advanced in some ways. But again, it just takes one thing to switch.
But I think, if there ever was, a thing to make us reconsider the way that we're doing things, like a global virus and shutdown is it, right? And I think that it's such an amazing time to be talking about this and all the other webinars that we've done, because all of them are so relevant to essentially humans reconnecting with what it is to be human again. I mean, I'm ringing my parents. They're out in Hertfordshire, in just north of London. And when I ring them, I hear birds chirping in the receiver. And I never heard that. I've lived in that house all my life. So my parents have never moved house since I've been alive anyway. And I've always heard these aeroplanes. I've never heard birds. And then every time I ring them, I'm like, it's so noisy outside. I can hear all of the birds all the time, and it's so beautiful. It's amazing to be hearing that nature returning. So you guys have seen, you may have seen the Facebook videos of nature reclaiming the cities of X, Y, and Z, and you get deer walking through different parts of the world's cities. And I think it's such an amazing moment for us to really reconsider how we want to design the world, with the fact that we've had a chance to take a breath and reconsider. And all these people moving to the countryside are going, well, that's it. I love nature. I want to enjoy it and I want to embrace it. And the rate we're going with mass manufacturing and lack of regulation, we're going to lose access to the most awe-inspiring and unifying one of them all, which is the night sky.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you, and hopefully, what I try to do slightly different than my peers, because they're some people within this topic are quite interested in getting regulations. Obviously we want regulations, but I don't want it to be the only condition that we resort to. I think if we can alter the culture, I think one of the comments that was written in this as well, would you be interested in getting involved with schools and stuff? I am involved with the educational aspect of it as well. So with the Norwich Repam Observatory stuff. So and also whenever we can get the chance, we always engage the community. And first thing first is if we can get to the young minds at an early stage, it's way more important to actually alter that perception at an early age.
Well, I mean, James Paul Bohr has just made a good point. It's there's so many points and there's so many It's quite well closing the loop. The fact that at the beginning we said the more doors you open, the more you realize that there's just crazy stuff you can go down. And yeah, I mean, it's, if we sort of bring it back to almost a conclusion, and we look at all the points that we discussed, the importance of the night sky, the importance to protect nature, and all of that kind of stuff. What in the context of the design world and in terms of us supporting you and what the general sort of International Association of Dark Skies is doing, how would you advise the listeners and people that will catch up and just people that just want to get involved on how they can help?
Thank you. I mean, supporting me is supporting your the importance that darkness plays within your day-to-day life as well. And it's basically that's all we care, that's all we want. And there are people out there individually fighting off light pollution or creating communities to do that. There's Commission for Dark Skies. There's also International Association of Dark Sky Association, and many other people that maybe you haven't even heard of. And day to day, I get emails and like back and forth, try to provide every advice that I can. So basically, having a bit more like sensitivity and a tuned approach towards this subject. Every little victory is very important. And if you can go to the last slide, we can just basically wrap it up there. The final one, yeah. The way I see it is like, the night sky is our ancient heritage. Until recently, our ancestors actually experienced it in its full might, which inspired philosophy, art, science, religion, like anything that you can think of. It's very important that we maintain that access, not only for us, for future generations as well. And our growing disinterest in what's out there is also proportionate to our interest here down on Earth, that we're always obsessed with the small screens and we've never subjected ourselves to so much light. Hence the reason the research is still catching up with that. We're trying to define, is it the blue end of the spectrum, or is it the amount of collective light that we're exposing ourselves to? Because now we have every device that we're using is emitting light. I think it's very important that we keep that ancient heritage and try to pass it on to the next generations. And that will require a lot of work. It will require a collective effort from everybody. This is not a one-man job. And we'll, by time, find each other and basically join forces.
Well, I mean, as I sort of said throughout this, I got so sort of fired up, and I've had the sort of veil lifted, and it really is an amazing and really important area to think of. So thank you for lending us the wisdom that you've got, and sort of, hopefully everyone sort of still logged on or whatever would have seen sort of just how amazing light can be, but just how controlled and considered it needs to be as well. I mean, if you were to say, a few key take-home points for the obviously quite long presentation, but what would you say?
Well, this has been great fun, by the way. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no, pleasure.
It's really easygoing and chatting with you, and I really enjoyed the conversational aspect of it. I hope the other people.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah, hopefully.
I think the key takeaway points is try to give a consideration to darkness, and try to communicate to the people around you. Most importantly, your clients. Make them see it as an asset to start with, that it's the given quality that you build up upon. Second is try to use light where you need it, the amount that you need it. Try to be judicious if you can. All projects are different, all clients are different, all people that you work with are different. Every little victory counts, and try to use amber color, with pristine. We're trying to I'm angling for 2000K. That might be a bit too controversial, but we'll see if we can achieve. If I could, I would want to go 1800 or 1500. That would allow me, but I think that might be too controversial. So we're trying to find a balance, but try to go in the warmer range if you can. Again, it depends on the project, but and also, have a chat with your neighbor, have a chat with your project neighbor as well. Just basically, goodwill goes a long way. the will to basically understand and communicate is the powerful tool we have. So hopefully then we don't have to resort to legal action or like, regulations and standards. I'm still a bit like optimistic, maybe naive in that sense, but maybe there's more that we can do before resorting to the nuclear option.
But I think that's part of being human as well, isn't it? And I think, social, there's a lot going around about how social networks have actually made us less social creatures than ever. And yeah, I think it's a long-standing thing that needs to be resolved is the connection to your neighbor. And yeah, I'm one of those oddballs on the tube that tends to talk to people. So you'll get all the angry eyes staring at me and telling me that it's London. That doesn't happen. So well, yeah, maybe just open up the comms a bit more. And yeah, but guys, we've been going for an hour and 20 minutes. It feels like it's been 5 minutes. I've got so much more I want to sort of discuss with you and stuff. And maybe we'll do it over a beer at a safe distance when the moment is all right. But Kareem, thank you so much, man. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise, I really enjoyed this. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate this. It's been good fun.
Yeah, likewise. And guys, everyone at home, whichever country you're in, thank you for tuning in. We've literally had like pretty much the same amount of people at the beginning as to the end. So yeah, hopefully doing something right, but or you can work out how to log off. But no, thank you so much. We'll send an emailer out afterwards with Kareem's take-home points as well, link to Dark Source, and YouTube links so you can catch up or rewatch or share or whatever you'd like. But a summary of sort of what this platform is about. It's called Light Tribe. It's set up by a company called Phos, and we want to separate it from Phos as a company. We want Light Tribe to be an independent research arm that does exactly what hopefully we've done here, which is to introduce people to areas in the lighting industry that they hadn't necessarily considered, and to support people that are doing amazing things like Kareem or like Dr. Shelley or Marianne or Russell Foster, or we've got such an amazing industry full of such inspiring and insanely creative people. It's amazing, and we'll do whatever we can to try and curate amazing inspirational content going forward. So follow our Instagram, follow our YouTube, follow Dark Source, and hopefully we'll see you for the next one. But again, Kareem, thank you, and yeah, everyone enjoy the rest of your weeks.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks. Bye.
Bye all.